Hi. In my recent video, which talked about wealth, and this is 1 Kings chapter 10, I did it yesterday. I intentionally did not talk about, well, rich Christians. It didn't talk about that at all. But instead, I talked about rich churches, successful ministries, put it that way. Because I think that's the more direct application from the passage. Here we're talking about Solomon. Solomon is God's king who is blessed with the smarts, the wisdom, and the wealth in order to bless all the people. What happens is he hoards it for himself. He builds a nice temple for God, but also builds a nice palace, a nice house for himself. And instead of applying this to some rich Christian somewhere who's made a lot of money, and other passages talk about that. But this particular passage talking about someone who's supposed to be faithful with that wealth, I thought, maybe this applies more to a church that might be the biggest church in the city, that all the youngsters, 20 or 30-year-olds, they're going there, and all the serving age people, they're going to that church. Here in Cambridge, all the students are going to that one particular church. And the challenge is, what does it mean to be faithful with all this blessing, being the biggest church in the land, biggest fish in the pond? And sometimes, we almost fool ourselves. We fool ourselves by saying that in order to be faithful, bring our offense to this church. This is the faithful church. This is the church where we serve you well by teaching you the Bible, and you serve us well by living out the Bible. And so just bring them to this church. And we casually just don't mention all the other smaller churches. We don't denigrate them. We don't say they're bad or anything. We just don't mention them. And I wonder what it will look like if instead of saying that all this blessing is meant to be confined just within us, if we actually share that blessing, if we use every influence we had to encourage other churches, other Christians who are our neighbors in the land. Now I know, I understand, I get it, that there is a doctrine of the body of Christ, that we're meant to serve as one body within this church. And that church, it's a body of Christ as well. But I wonder if we use this one real doctrine almost as an excuse to ignore this other doctrine of the generosity of the gospel, like even the essence of the gospel, that it's other person centered. And it's just a danger. It's just a warning that, again, in 1 Kings chapter 10, Solomon hasn't yet committed any great sin, but he's about to. And you can tell that he's on this track simply because the direction and the flow of this blessing is always going this way. It's always going this way, always this way. And so, it's just worth asking, in anything that the church is doing, the pastor is doing, the leader is doing, where is the flow? Is this flowing towards us, or is this flowing outwards towards others? Now, you want to say it's flowing towards God, and that's, of course, the right reason. But isn't it the flow of Christ that is also always outwards? That Jesus, who was rich, became poor for our sakes. He took our condemnation such that we might receive his blessing. And therefore, here again is that group of individuals, that church, that ministry that God has blessed. And it's really from God immensely. Where is the flow going towards? Is it just towards us? Or maybe in God's providence and according to his generosity and gospel, it should be going outwards towards others to bless not just us, but everyone else, maybe at the expense of us. So again, talking about generosity, talking about just that nature of the gospel. To be faithful is not to be insecure that we need to be the best, but actually to be maybe insecure. Why is it that we have so much? Maybe we shouldn't. Maybe we should use it, and maybe we should give it all away.